Welcome to Relationships and Astrology. I'm Margaret Gray in Dublin.
And I'm Armand Diaz in New York.
And today we're going to have a look at some of the transits this coming week because it's pretty busy, isn't it, Armand? I mean, we've got Mercury conjunct Saturn, and then it's going to square Chiron, it's trining Uranus, and I'm looking down here at the charts in front of me. And then, of course, we've got Jupiter in Libra, square Venus, Pluto in Capricorn. So it's quite a busy time in the sky at the moment.
It's a very busy week for everything. And I think it's going to be, especially as we get towards the end of the week, very busy for relationships. And, you know, Margaret, these transits that happen in the sky, the sort of the astrological weather, it's a little bit like if Venus is conjuncting Jupiter, it's a little bit like we're all having a Venus-Jupiter transit. The only difference is when Pluto or Jupiter transits your chart, it does so for months or years. These things come and go quickly. And yet, they kind of act as triggers for some things.
It's so true. And it depends on where they land in both the charts of individuals and also, very importantly, for relationships, where they land in the chart of the composite chart. So for anybody in a relationship, it's really worth looking at it. You know, what's going on with my composite at the moment? What's been woken up? What's happening with it? So what are your thoughts about this Mercury conjunct Saturn, and then, of course, squaring Chiron and trine Uranus that's coming up in terms of relationships, Armand?
Well, you know, Mercury, first of all, Mercury and Saturn are both in Sagittarius, where especially Mercury and Sagittarius, sometimes, you know, the big picture, we get the gist of things. We don't need to really worry about the details so much. And Saturn would tend to say, hey, wait a minute, no, let's look at the details. Let's slow down and see what's actually going on here. And yet Saturn's in Sagittarius. So I think that maybe what's happening there is a little bit of this kind of like, you know, are we lining up with our beliefs? Are we lining up with sort of the party line? Are we sticking to what we said we're going to stick to? I think that might be sort of the theme of that.
I agree. And I think the whole, you know, I know I keep bringing this up, but the whole issue of what is the truth still seems to be around so much. You know, what is the absolute truth? Because Sagittarius is always asking why, you know, why this and what is this? What's going on with this? And I think another thing with Mercury and Sag to be aware of is just to be aware of how the words come out, particularly when it's an aspect to Chiron, that, you know, words can really heal or words can really wound. So just to be a little bit careful about that at the moment too. And Saturn may help with that, may help kind of to really help us to edit what comes out of our mouth at the moment, particularly with our nearest and dearest.
I hope that Saturn helps us to edit
Yeah.
Because, you know, the other side of Sagittarius and you know, Sagittarius can be rather blunt, you know, in a
Yes.
not meaning
I agree.
harm, but just very blunt. And Saturn in Sagittarius could say, well, you know, I'm sorry, I'm being blunt, but that's the truth. It would be good to keep in mind that, yes, with that aspect to Chiron, there is some healing potential, and hopefully we can use the words, if bluntly, at least in a good, productive way. The other thing, as you pointed out, is that at the end of this week, after everything, is Mercury in a nice aspect to Uranus. And that seems like maybe after we go through the struggles of the week, there's a little liberation at the end waiting for us.
Yes, I think some new information, some new insights. It's really kind of pushing us forward. I think anything that is aspecting this Uranus in Aries, which of course we've had a while, we're going to have a while longer, really it's like just propelling us forward into, you know, something which we need to head into. So it's really something new. It can be something very refreshing. And of course, for charts that have a lot of fire in them, it's very exciting. For charts that have more earth and water, it may feel a little bit just like the ground is opening under, so it may be a little destabilizing, and it puts a lot of pressure on the nervous system.
Yes, and this is, you know, this is coming off of a time of, or this is really in the midst of a time of so much uncertainty, because last week we had all of the Neptune activity, the Neptune station, Neptune conjunct the South Node, and that's sort of still with us, you know, so the sort of fire energy which says, hey, we know what's going on, is in the context of not really knowing what's going on.
There's certainly been a lot of floating, I've noticed that people have been saying, you know, there's been a lot of confusion around, and you're right, that's still hanging around. So there's kind of a lot of conflicting energies around. And then, of course, we come up to Jupiter in Libra squaring the Venus, Pluto in Capricorn. Well, first we've got Venus, Pluto coming together, of course, in Capricorn, and then we've got Jupiter squaring them, and that's more around the 24th, 25th. What are your thoughts about that? Because that's quite a big one for relationships.
Oh, yeah. Well, I always think about Venus and Pluto getting together, or in any aspect, as that underworld journey. The Demeter and Persephone myth of, Persephone being taken down into the underworld. And I think in our relationships, whenever we have a Venus Pluto aspect, there is that kind of blending of our relationship with power, with all of the things that go along with Pluto. And, it's certainly an opportunity for deeper intimacy, but it's an opportunity for power struggles. It's an opportunity to dig up some of the darker stuff as well.
Yes, I agree with you that we really go into the underworld and we go into what's at the core. I often think of it, when I was living in Hawaii and living on volcanic land, really on volcanic soil, there was always that sense that there's something rumbling underneath and that it can come up at any time. And, it shakes a little bit at times. And I think when any planet comes into contact with Pluto, it's really in volcanic territory where there's a core that's a very hot core, which can be passion and can be made up of a lot of things, and it can erupt. So it leaves us with the feeling of feeling a little bit, oh, what's going on here and what's really underneath. But it certainly helps to open up that core and to find, well, what is at the core? Is it something solid or is it something that's really outgrown?
Wow. Actually, I think Hawaii, I'm going to use this forever now, Margaret. And I'll give you credit for it for as long as I remember.
Thank you. I appreciate
but in Hawaii, it's the Venusian paradise, and it's on the volcanic. It is the perfect image of Venus Pluto. And yeah, I think that there's a little bit of a sense too, I think, with that of like, it's the beauty of the moment and the awareness that it is the moment. That is a very wow, that's amazing. But Jupiter in Libra, Venus's sign, is squaring the two. And of course, the Jupiter-Pluto square is a big deal on other levels in terms of what's happening in the world. But when we throw Venus in the midst of that, I think we get a very interesting mix. How do you think Jupiter is going to affect this?
It's interesting in Libra because Jupiter, of course, is such an expansive energy. So it expands anything it touches. So it's expanding this energy, this Venus Pluto. And yet it's in Libra, the Jupiter. So I think in a way, it's really trying to find the balance. So maybe it's helping also in relationships to see, okay, what is in balance and what isn't in balance. And the kind of things we're looking at in terms of balance are the core structures of the relationship. So is it built on an authentic foundation, or is it built on something that really doesn't have a strong, solid core? And I think this Jupiter will highlight, whether that's what's the truth behind it. That's my sense. What do you think?
I agree, and I think that Jupiter in Libra, a bit of a diplomat, looking sort of on both sides of the issue, and some of the Mercury aspects, and actually earlier in the week, Mercury is sextile to Jupiter, and they are in mutual reception. So I think that there is a little bit of that diplomacy type of thing. There is, maybe he's sort of like smoothing over some of the bluntness that we were talking about. And I think that there is like sort of two sides to that. On the one hand, there is kind of, helping to ease some of the tensions. I think Jupiter may help that a little bit with diplomacy. But I would also think that maybe there is a little bit of a danger of glossing over some of the issues.
I think you're right. I think there is the potential of that because it's like Jupiter is also in a hurry in a sense. It's like, let's not focus down. So I think it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that mix. I mean, that's what it feels like. There's such a mixture. And I think it's not so easy to grasp one thing or another. And of course, this particular transit is more likely to affect anybody who's got planets around 14 to 16 degrees, Libra, Aries, or Capricorn. And again, both individual and the composite chart to look at where does this land in your chart in terms of your relationships and how is it affecting them. And I think with the Venus Pluto, the focus when we're talking about relationships today is really more significant other intimate relationships rather than family relationships would be how I'd see it. But of course, it'll impact all relationships. But I think particularly those couple relationships are pretty highlighted this week.
Entirely so. And, these types of aspects, these mundane aspects that happen in the sky, the cosmic weather, a lot of times, if you're in a good spot, these things just sort of float past and you don't even really notice them, but they will show up stress marks in relationships that have a little bit more soft spots in the wall, as it were, that it will help to open up cracks that so I think a strong relationship, it could go unnoticed or even be helpful. A relationship that's in a little bit more vulnerable place, it may show up some of the difficulties.
I very much agree. And particularly when you're looking at the core underlying structures, it's like, what are the foundations? What's this built on? And also, how much work are the couple prepared to do? Because a lot of it has to do with, working on things as well. And what's the commitment to work on it? Because if that's there, then a lot of things can be overcome. And if it's not, then it makes it more challenging. So I think on that note, really, we'll have to leave our listeners for today. And just a quick reminder that we'll be coming back soon, and that around Christmas, in fact, 24th, 25th, the holiday time, Jupiter is going to be opposing Uranus and quincunxing Chiron. So there's a lot more going to happen. So tune into us again. See you soon, Armand. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Margaret.